For 1,000 years, Jews have lived in China, in the city of Kaifeng. Most of the world had never heard of such a thing as a Chinese Jew. However, in the last few years, information has been filtering out about this community that was once vibrant, became assimilated and dormant, and it is now having a resurgence. I'm talking with Shi Lei from Kaifeng, who is here in Toronto for the first time.
Oh, my ancestors, they came from Persia 1,000 years ago. And they were...
1,000 years ago.
1,000 years ago. They came from Persia, according to what they themselves wrote on stone monuments, that they came from Persia because when they were in Persia, they were sort of like persecuted, you know, over there. And when they heard about the prosperity of Kaifeng, China, it was because Kaifeng, 1,000 years ago, Kaifeng was China's national capital. It was so prosperous, open. So the Jews just decided to went on the Silk Road and coming to Kaifeng.
Was that part of the Silk Road, the trade route?
Yes, Kaifeng is on the Silk Road, Silk Route, whatever you say. Silk Road officially, you know, I know that is between Palestine and Kaifeng, China.
So traders must have come from Palestine too?
Yes. So there were many traders, you know, from different countries coming to China. And those Jews in Persia, they came to Kaifeng. When they first came, they were also traders. I mean, my ancestors. They sold Western cotton cloth. So they were traders. And when they came to Kaifeng, they were warmly welcomed by the Chinese emperor. That's the Song dynasty. I mean, back in 11th century, which is 1,000 years ago. And the Chinese emperor said to them, "You have come to our China, roots of your ancestors, and hand them down in Kaifeng." So for then on...
What a different experience, given anti-Semitism and pogroms and being thrown out of almost every country in the world. That was a totally different experience.
That's why the Jews, you know, my ancestors, were so grateful, you know, to China. And also the history did prove that in Chinese history, there is never anti-Semitism in China. Say, during the Second World War, as we know, say, Shanghai, China is the only city, which opened its door to the Jewish refugees escaping Nazi terror from Europe. So China is always a country, you know, who treats Jews so nicely. You know.
Did your family practice Judaism?
Oh, my family now, we are in the process of learning. So we are.
When you were growing up, did you know you were Jewish?
Yes, I always knew that I'm of Jewish descent, and our families originally are from Israel. Because this a bit of information is passed down from generation to generation. And the Jews in Kaifeng never stopped telling their children and grandchildren, say, we are from Israel, we are Jewish, never stopped.
But the intermarriage,
right, the intermarriage
and
did
assimilation,
happen. Right.
Did they disappear for a while?
Yes, especially in the mid-19th century and early 20th century, this, we say, became so assimilated. Because 1,000 years ago they came from Persia to China, settled down. 1,000 years stay in China. And I do know that Confucianism had certain impact.
And Buddhism?
And Buddhism impact on the Jews. So the Jews eventually became Chinese, became assimilated mid-19th century and especially early 20th century. So my generations in that period forgot and stopped all the practices and forgot the Hebrew language. And now, because I am the first Kaifeng Jewish descendant ever who were sent to study Judaism and Hebrew in Israel.
In Israel?
Yeah, in 2001. So 2001 I went to study in
But what made you do it? You come from a family that's so assimilated, even though you knew, it didn't seem to have an impact on the daily life.
But our Jewish is always known
inside.
Inside.
You felt it.
Yeah, we felt it. And also...
what made you want to go into it more?
I always had a strong wish, desire, like that of every Kaifeng Jew in Kaifeng, always want to learn the stuff, Judaism and Hebrew language, resume our traditions. This is the thing the whole community wants, and I am one of them. So finally, 2001, I met Rabbi Marvin Tukayer from New York City. And
Where did you meet him?
I met this rabbi in Kaifeng in 2000. And the following year, this rabbi arranged my acceptance in Bar Ilan University.
And were you accepted there by the Israelis? How did they feel about you?
Israelis, the Jews over there, I think the first reaction was they were very surprised when I told them that I'm of Jewish descent. I'm from Kaifeng, China. They were surprised. Oh, in China, they've never heard about that. Also in Israel, almost everyone, is Jewish, but somehow they've never heard about, in a place, in a city called Kaifeng, which they have never heard about, Kaifeng, China, there are Jews. Very surprised. And after that, always they began to ask many questions, They were very curious, to know about Chinese Jews in Kaifeng. And also I think I did learn much, when I was in Israel.
Did you learn Hebrew? Were you fluent in Hebrew?
Yes, I learned it when I first got there. I just immediately went to Ulpan, the Hebrew teaching class, to learn Hebrew language. And then when the school started, so I studied halakha, all the Jewish laws.
Did you become religious?
When I was in Israel, I observed all the laws. Because I always studied, in the Orthodox environment when I was in Israel. But back in Kaifeng, say 2004, I came back to Kaifeng and began to share what I learned with the rest of the community.
How many are there?
Nowadays in Kaifeng, there are some 500 individuals.
And is there a resurgence? Do they want to identify as Jews?
Most of them want to resume the traditions and learn the language, Hebrew.
Is there a rabbi there? Who's
in history?
You're teaching them. You're showing them the way.
Yeah, I'm teaching them the language, also English, also some practices, how to celebrate, the festivals. But in history, there were rabbis in Kaifeng, but somehow, because the assimilation, became so intensely, eventually. Even the last rabbi, our last rabbi in Kaifeng died in 1810. After that, because this community became so ignorant, so after this last rabbi died, no one in the community could take his place. No one could teach the community. And the language, forgotten. Knowledge, Judaism, practices, forgotten, stopped. So now, Kaifeng, we Kaifeng Jewish descendants are in the process of...
200 years later. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, coming to life from nothing almost.
Yeah.
Except identity, except they never forgot who they were.
Right. For 1,000 years, we never forget we are Jewish.
How about the government? The government that treats